Okay, hello. If you're using your notebook, your title and learning objectives and keywords should already be in. If you're not and you're using a piece of paper, can you make sure you note it down? Okay, something's happened up here in terms of my title and stuff, but you should be all right. So the title is active transport. The learning objective, to be able to explain the process of active transport and the differences to diffusion. So that's what we're going to learn today. Keywords then down the bottom: high, low, concentration, energy and gradient. Remember, in science, your scientific literacy is really important. Your do not activity, okay, you're not using these keywords, okay. You need to try and remember from previous lessons the definition of diffusion and osmosis and fill in the gaps, okay. Pause the screen, have a go, and then I'll be back in a minute to give you the answers. So, diffusion is the movement of particles from in a concentration gradient from an area of high concentration to low concentration. Passive process, doesn't require energy. Okay, osmosis is the movement of water molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration through a selectively permeable membrane. Okay, so what is active transport? Okay, active transport is something a little bit different from diffusion osmosis, which is what you've been doing previously. First of all, we're just going to look at concentration gradients. These are hills and graphs. They also have concentration gradients like we talk about in terms of the movement of molecules. Which one's the steepest gradient? When we move up the gradient, and which ones move down the gradient? Okay, just have a look at them and put your answers in and pause the screen and I'll put the answers up in a minute. Okay, so the steepest gradient is 30%. You should have worked that one out. Looking at the pictures then, 30 and 13 are moving up and 10 is moving down. Okay, so just looking at which way the particles are going. We would say that it's easier to go down a 10% gradient than it would be to go up. Okay, so keep that in your head. It's easier to go down than it would be to go up. So, moving down the concentration gradient, which way will the particles move? So you've got an area of high concentration here, area of low concentration here. Thinking about what we've previously done, which way would the particles move? So normally in diffusion osmosis, they move from a high concentration to a low concentration. However, in active transport, they go the other way. So active transport then is the other way round. So they move from an area where it's low concentration to an area where it's high concentration, okay? They move up the concentration gradient and this requires energy, okay? This is the only type that requires energy and this is called active transport. So just a little bit of information about active transport. It does require energy. Particles move against a concentration gradient. The energy is needed to make pumps to move the particles the wrong way. Okay, we use this to get glucose from intestines in our blood. So in your notebook now, there's a little space to write a definition of active transport and to kind of like fill in the diagram, thinking about what I've just spoke about. Okay. This is a little bit of more information. Active transport occurs across a semi-permeable membrane. So they're all occurring across a membrane. Moves particles from a low concentration to a high concentration. Okay, this is against the concentration gradient. Transport or carrier proteins are needed to get these molecules into the cells. These use energies. Cells that do active transport must contain large numbers of mitochondria. Mitochondria, which we learnt about, are the cells that make energy. Okay. Where is this used? You need to know where it's used in a couple of places. So sometimes substances can be absorbed against the concentration gradient. This is called active transport. It uses energy from respiration, which takes place in our mitochondria. So in plants, it's used mainly in your roots, okay? Your roots are there to collect water, which happens via osmosis, but then they're also there to collect ions such as potassium, magnesium, phosphate, they're used then to make sure that the plant stays the right colour, which is green, that it grows properly. But however, they're actually in quite a low concentration outside the roots, and there's a higher concentration within the roots. So we use active transport then to bring in the rest of the ions that we need, okay? Because we don't need them outside in the soil, but we really need them in our roots to transport around the plant, okay? It also happens in terms of absorbing glucose, which is a sugar, which we use to make energy. So we really need it to make energy. It happens in our small intestine. So in our small intestine is surrounded by loads of blood capillaries. Now, them blood capillaries have got quite a low concentration of glucose, and our actual small intestine has quite a high concentration of glucose. So absorption of small amounts of sugar into the villi. So we want to get all that glucose from our blood capillaries into our villi to be able to use it. But it's actually the wrong way around, because you've got low in your blood and it's high in your small intestine. So it goes against the concentration gradient, and that's active transport. They're the two big ways, and you must note them down, that we use active transport in plants and animals. Finally, over the past couple of lessons, we've talked an awful lot about these three different processes. Okay, so this is a Venn diagram. Obviously, you've got your main bits here, where you can just write information about each one, and there's bits where they cross over to write information about all of them, okay? So you need to pause the screen and start working out which ones do osmosis and diffusion have in common, and you can write them by there. Which ones do maybe osmosis and active transport have in common, you can write them there, or diffusion and active transport, or is there something that they all have in common, and you can write it in there, okay? So have a go. Okay. So I've just come up with a couple. This is by no means all of them, but I've just started filling out my Venn diagram, and then you can kind of carry it on before you submit it, okay? So I picked up active transport. It moves from a low to a high concentration, which is different from the other two, so that goes in its own bubble, and it also requires energy, okay? Osmosis, the only thing that's common just to osmosis is it's the movement of water, okay? And then the things that are similar between osmosis and diffusion, which I put here, they're both passive processes, so they don't require energy, and they also move from a low to a high, okay? Things that are similar between diffusion and active transport, they use other molecules. Water, it happens with osmosis, so we're talking like oxygen, sugar, all things here would happen with active transport or diffusion. The thing that they've all got in common is that they all require a selectively permeable membrane, so that's where the cross happens. Now, you might come up with loads of other ones, so I want you to fill that in and submit that, but I've given you some examples to help you. Thank you. Make sure you complete the challenges as well and submit it. Thank you.